Hello, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. It's nothing personal. It's recorded that predicate acts with facts, roles, needs, methods, and natures have remote uses of the information you've been given, and you proclaim collusions with your use of the word extremism. And Judge Napolitano, I've asked you many times to get the Wethersfield police from the forging names and switching names and planting evidences onto paper. 3 times, more than this, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Kevin Dillon through communications, which is other than they say. They switch names and forge names, also with judges and prosecutors and their family members, also personally and professionally with foreign and domestic military. So those delusions associated simultaneously with criminally foreign influence uses of words like extremism and pretending people said things debatable and changing what people say. Trantola, I had barely any communications with him at all. He's one of the ones further involved with a forced principal child offender, then proven, but then I recorded more then and now, including retired police chiefs with the same house/S involved with wire crime acts and methods, whole acts and methods, with other police departments too, other police forms, co-defendants of and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his lawyer, people who had fake conversations with me about legal cases tied to this, and as ones associated with them in a 2006 district court case. Increasingly, people next to Fox Connecticut News have roles with a Rick Sanfaglione and a Timothy O'Brien and a Mark Violet with some KKK and Black themed and Latino themed people that I don't even know their names, and Joshua Julia. I never had anything to do with Joshua Julia. His name was repeated to me by a Mark Violet, involved with people on off the state judicial branch offices and with spots next to it who are involved with identity. I never had a class with Mark Violet in my life, or nor his brother. They have rules with foreign and domestic military on off Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, involved with foreign and domestic military, also medical, and judges and prosecutors personally and professionally, their whole families, their extended family members and their mixtures together, already rolls with predicate acts with facts. And all this is recorded. See, increasingly people from other areas. In other words, we need to get them on paper, one name and sequence. They also have their patients and criminals. They run into high life progressions. So they describe instances and people, and they investigate things, and it was fake conversations. And they're hiding the foreign names with those same ones and overt criminal enterprises, private ones. These are also people that forged the names and forced Saudis to collusions with them. And while while they were being used remotely by worse, as the same ones that forced the Saudi attackers to steal the Saudi identity. This is also relative to how the beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the Quran, they both have parts that dictate how to read those books, how to defend those books syntactically. But people don't even know those parts, because if they defended that, they would realize, all fakes with natures of logic. In other words, they want to keep pretending things are debatable that aren't debatable. We have black people's right to life clearer than day. We could discern all sides in criminal and civil cases. The courts, the difference of them or the prisons. I don't know if the state of Connecticut corrections and judicial branch offices also has roles with the differences, rackets, with a whole bunch of different natures of countries on off the campuses, with the judges and their family members and ties to them, intercities who also have been along roads and routes. They communicate things they don't intend to, but then in other words, by strangers. Years later, I had to figure out who they were. There's a guy who said a father of the parents of I never had a conversation with the mother, and I only conversation I had with the father. He was trying to get me involved with, after they already found out about all these people with pressing a thing on a telephone, and then people could get free phone communications. It looked like a cigarette back in the day. There are people with the Delafair family who has roles with. There was a probate court judge in their family, probate court judges have been speaking fake things into records and putting delusions in records at the same time, with foreign and domestic doctors and their patients and criminals being used and having been used also on campus as family members running into high live regressions, running into paint arrays of fake communication, changed communications with others. They don't even know because they have to pretend other in the past too. These are also names of predicate acts of facts on, off, and between campuses, intercities, and interstates. So, in other words, those people aren't looking out for, if you want to look out for Palestine or America, you focus on the predicate acts with facts method. You stop changing what our founders communicated. We have communicated that there was a breaching method entrenched and no one had free speech. The nature of debate regarding this has been quoting books, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. Get on paper, one name and sequence. Don't pretend they had integrity. Interbranch. Let's go, please. And if you guys gonna bring up wars, get revolution correct. Don't pretend that other than James Madison's plan is what caused the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, and don't pretend other with music playing and pretend not to realize. Now, also, because campuses A through Z are sickly, the forgiveness is because sickly distinctly. The best ones and the worst ones are collusions because there's uses of the difference of that consciously to black people. Period. We have means of period. There are roles of predicate acts with facts methods that the victim, predator / hyper predator / hyper victim, hyper predator, conviction natures, formal, anyone like overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the three branches of government, the intelligence tied to them, out of the corrections offices of Connecticut with the ones involved interstates, with all kinds of medicines corruption too, and tactical delusions, and way worse. Therefore, simultaneously, all kind of wire mail crime, methods, whole methods of them, whole predicate acts methods. Uses means to use the news too, and names next to them. Use truths used for lies, directions and needs to hide lies, and illusions or keep them blamed on other things, others, ourselves. In other words, this breaching method employed them to use that for themselves, to use all location /s. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, as the only one speaking for the law, as the only one speaking for the sciences, individually grouped them together. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including if they are a majority of people, including if they are everyone, black people. This is why and how most of us know that only fake integrity speaks regarding what we really know was entrenched before America's founders were born. More and more, that is being hard to figure out because you guys have let the breaching method interpret history, leaving out the breaching method, leaving out how international companies and countries and the difference of that, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorism, where do you think it came from? All distinct natures of the same identity of a bridged species volume system. We are a species body of individual bodies with all group differences, plural, and demonstration of the hyper difference in its identity relationship to itself. And only increasing value of that, generating more of itself the way it does. Oh, this is debatable. Focus on the predicate acts. So we're going to observe how predicate acts, we're going to show us the identity of nature shows us the parts of itself. There are distinct parts of itself as invisible but still discernible. In my last video, you'll learn about the 5 parts of time. Like, for example, time, the 3 ways it's bound to. The difference between 3 and 5. Nature shows us to contemplate that difference. And with that, it shows us how we're dysfunctional. How there is a body of hyper invisible but still discernible. That is inseparable from distinctly, but also non-distinctly from and as the body that the parts of speech are also manifest, grouped, and demonstrate. So for the discernment of. So there's one identity. In other words, so there's an extent of the time that we know is true always from the past. When there's an extent of what is active reality now, grouped too. There's an extent we don't know about, but there's an extent we know about. It's true always. And there's an extent of nature's identity in the future that we know about now, like the seasons. And there's an extent we don't know about. Just like there's an extent we know that we don't know about that was before the extent we know about. So there's 5 there. But this comes with demonstrations. No, but this is also functional why and how we need more than one name for the verb. This is where we can observe the identity, the hyper-invisible but still discernible, distinct from but with and as the value. Also non-distinctly as the parts of speech, as the invisible but still discernible. And so a predicate of English grammar shows us that the invisible but still discernible identity of a main verb being discerned. For example, a verb, if you put an ing on it, it becomes a participle nature. You know, or can be referred to as a gerund. And the difference is its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that relativity. English was revealed to teach about relativity / hyperrelativity. This is more probable and is more practical, increasingly than what is convicted by English and for it. So we have descriptions of how English grammar should be used. People like it short and concise, and then they want to use their evidence, use people's opinions. They're dishonest. For example, in other words, we'll examine. There are proofs that the period is the point of real possession, and the comma is the shadow of possession over the discernment, over the invisible but still discernible, the hyper invisible but still discernible, and its identity of relationship to itself, which is only increasing value. Like, for example, boxing, martial arts, and wrestling. Nature itself groups them. Where how nature itself shows us the identity designed to share, and where and how they appear not to share that identity. In other words, it comes with demonstration /s of the same thing, /s. And it's where and how its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. Study of it shows us, it answers our questions regarding how to explain where we come from, the state of things, the course, boxing. In other words, so James Madison's plan and the founders behind him, and George Washington's agreement to help them and to use that plan, and how that caused, enforced the Declaration of Independence to be and rolls with it. And therefore the Constitutional Convention too. Otherwise, everyone would have got in trouble by the same laws that made them not want, they had to be forced. Because everyone would had no free speech and had to pretend otherwise they were censored, and through our own, as human names A through Z. Otherwise, that body was censored, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. Because this did the same thing to all groupings of humanity. It knew would try to adapt to the possession it took over names A through Z in defenses of their own names, uses, and or of the names of others. Like people labeled criminals. Including, in other words, the people who have been labeled them criminals have been roles of predicate acts with facts methods and with the courts and prisons tied to, and people with the prisons increasingly at crime scenes. Whiting forensics, since before I was a kid, was used remotely criminally foreign influence. Increasingly, the collusions with different racketeering, foreign and domestic military, Navy, general from Kuwait, even if it was made up. There's a Dean Keyes involved. You can't make those things up. And these are people involved with the World Trade Center attack. FBI Director Luskin and various natures of courts and their family members, Weathersfield, a whole bunch of people tied to a Mazzucato bakeries are reportedly married to a Cintron, a police chief Cintron, and 1 year ago. And they have roles with probate judges' families, with houses involved with wire crimes and mail crimes and falsified police reports, and fake conversations with me with the same police officers as a kid and now as an adult. And they won't get on writing. They have remote uses of Judge Napolitano's Facebook page, the Fox Connecticut News' Facebook page, and the Facebook pages of the campuses. A whole bunch of people tied to a Thomas Dillon, an Anna Dillon, and a Kevin Dillon, and people that live near them, where they're reported to live. I don't know exactly where they live, but they're recorded increasingly involved with predicate acts with people on off the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices and spots next to them. Increasingly, there was a guy who played. There are people who had narratives about playing baseball and football in a field near my house with the judges and prosecutors and their family members who have been planting evidences on all sides of people's houses and using religious spots, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, fabricating fake conversations with people of all ages, and then to fake and change communications with those around them, increasingly including their family members, little kids, and then as adults. Attaching kids to fake conversations and ties to doctors as kids and as adults, and the news, because their roles would also used remotely criminally foreign influence, all natures of investigators, their campuses, and their homes, all associated with them. All increasingly, mayors and people tied to them have been planting fake motivations for their roles with federal evidences, crimes, natures of identity, theft, fraud, slanders, and motivation screening for the foreign bodies involved. Connecticut mayors had roles with the World Trade Center attack and the Saudis. Again, where and how Saudi attackers used the name, were used remotely while use the name, the identity of Saudi Arabia remotely, criminally foreign influence, while our own also used remotely forced America's roles, forging names of foreign doctors on Harvard Hospital, mail and wire crimes with them, as one's increasingly involved with wire and mail crimes with the people with falsified police reports to the Weathersfield Police, and their roles with extended family members involved with the principal child offender and other child offenders, leaders of kids first forced. A whole bunch of police departments tied to a Ray Cololo and to a Phil Cololo that are brought up. There's a Joshua Julian and a Mark Violet involved with a Whiting forensics and a Justo Kovinskis. These are foreign and domestic military out of UConn, Trinity College, and CCSU, involved with Harvard Hospital names, involved putting fake conversations with people in databases, including with judges and prosecutors as collusions with themselves, and personally and professionally with other courts, and foreign and domestic, and crime scenes, increasingly collusions. Their patients and criminals run into high life questions with themselves. They have all kinds of predicate acts with facts, checks, and methods, sticking fake things in databases. All kinds of scams with lawyers, too, involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the courts themselves putting fake things at the same time, increasingly with people out of the state of Connecticut, corrections, and judicial branch offices. Names next to the corrections offices. Lance Cuddy is increasingly involved with people involved with child abusers, offenders, of kids. I never had a conversation with Lance Cuddy in my life. In other words, and it's something to do with their roles with Park Street, and Alina's Pizza has roles with foreign and domestic intelligence and foreign FBI and courts, family members with foreign and domestic military, involved with criminal enterprises, pretending legitimately undercover and all that. Well, they have roles of predicate acts with facts together in delusions, black pupils. Here, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Facebook also has roles with use of the word extremism, criminally foreign influence. Some ways it was the FBI and the courts. Some ways it was Facebook people themselves. Increasingly, the computer teachers from Connecticut campuses have roles of predicate acts with facts and names involved, like a Joe DeMauro. A whole bunch of people tied to a Joe DeMauro. And a Heather Hansen roles with home break-ins and wire crime and mail crime. So it has something to do with their roles with corners of streets all along Route 175 and its conjunctions like Walker Hill Road. Also with Hartford police involved with shootings and stuff like that, where there are certain type of victim / hyper victim and reacting the way they're shown to because you're used remotely. Otherwise, there's a Chris White. I don't know who was influenced to make fake exception. I don't and a whole bunch of people tied to them. There's a Jennifer Socia and a Jim Socia. A bunch of people out of Central Connecticut State University that I never had a conversation with involved with the computer people and others putting fake things at each of the campuses I went to, putting fake ties between them with people from other campuses, including the difference of that is used consciously, including with the news to prevent people writing since they were kids. That's why they're faking it now as an adult, pretend I had conversations and mental diagnosis by a doctor when I was a kid. They had fake conversations with me. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved with Christina Sioka, her boss, a guy named one of the ones that by himself or someone did it for him, pretending ties to me, a Gilmore, a Dr. Gilmore. I never had a conversation with him in my life. Christina Sioka asked me asked me to define irony for her. And I didn't define it this way, but it's inherent omega, rises / raises. Why? I mean neutrality / neutralizing. Why? We'll examine this. In other words, regarding my programming method, which I have to put proofs that, because I also put proofs years before the Ukraine and Russian war and years before this, the war, and whatever they call it, conflagration, etc. It's the human species body eating itself. It's like cancer, led by a name that's not A through Z. This is more probable and practical to convict too. Criminal insidiousness, nature itself is propagated, self-cultivated here. Black pupils. We have black pupils, whites of eyes to see, discern. So WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them about the World Trade Center attack. They're pretending passions and emotions and integrity anyway and preventing me from getting a name on paper. A Tarantolo and other lawyers have collusions with them, with the networks and with the names next to them. Rixian Paglione next to the state capitol was influenced to have someone take their picture. Also a Chet Casper. I never had a conversation with Chet Casper, never had a class with him in my life. I never had a class with Rixian Paglione. The only exception, he sat across from me. We never had communications. That was in Mr. Neville's class. He's one of the ones all along Route 3 involved interstates with people involved with various natures of organized crime that his students had with him. I never had a personal conversation. God knows what they put on paper. But these are people involved with the World Trade Center attack years before it, shortly before it, in that context and since, who have also been intercampuses, intercities, planting evidences on and off campuses as people that aren't even in the same class with other people. And they're lying about their motivations with it. A whole bunch of our intelligence community never had at A through Z. Countries A through Z, locations, areas, states A through Z. They never have integrity, black people. You don't leave out how we have black people's whites of eyes and a breaching method assigned that to be communicating other. And everyone leaves that out. All exceptions, exception nature, are in demonstration of the same thing. People pretending to be about prejudice. If you were honestly trying to counter it as prejudice, you would have revealed this. Predicate acts with facts method is way worse than prejudice. And it wasn't leveraged by white or black. It was leveraged through each difference, being used as systems tactical ulterior from the one that has us individuals of the individual species body, with quality aspects in nature distinct from, but also non-distinct from other species bodies. And again, we didn't invent that, and they didn't invent that, so we could discern it. True all way. Vaccines, thank you. I do just things, but law. We need mandated law followed. They're preventing writing to keep hiding what they know is actually recorded. Get them on paper, please. Judge Napal, do what's right. They forge names and switch names. They have rules with violence on my street with people from other areas. And they confirm roles with it, non-verbally. Because there's a certain type of victim / hyper victim that the interbranch are shown they're only allowed to maintain, propagate. So don't be cowards and get on paper. I want a response for the principal child defenders campus confessions and the other names recorded involved. There's a Michael Emmett further involved with intelligence. A whole bunch of people are whiting forensics further involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes with kids and with leaders of the kids and with medical corruption. Fear God. Well, watch out. Get on paper with the courts and the state judicial branch. Bye.